Okay, Yuten, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at Visual Studio, and I'm going to give you a rundown on how to use it and an intro to some of the features. So I'll switch across to our Visual Studio window. And share that with you. Okay, so you can see my Visual Studio window now. And so when you start Visual Studio, this is the page that will load. You need to start a new project in order to actually get started. So we're going to go to File and just choose New and then Project. A project contains all of the different forms and all of the different files that you need in order to create a program, an application. And you'll see that the options, there's quite a lot of them. Okay, you can create Android applications, iOS applications, or we're going to start with a Windows application. So you'll see I've chosen a Windows desktop application over here on the left-hand side. And then we simply say what type of Windows desktop application. And we're going to create an application that has forms in it. And so that's your windows and your pop-ups and boxes and all that type of thing. Then down the bottom here, we need to give that a name. So we're going to create a very simple application that's going to have a couple of buttons on it. And then we're going to edit those buttons' properties in order to make them do different things. Okay, so let's just call this button jumper as our starting application. And you can see you can create a directory for the solution as well. That should just stay ticked. Say OK. And if you don't already have a program called button jumper, then it would load. I do have one, so let's call this button jumper number 2, and we'll say OK. All right, so we've now got our button jumper solution being created, and you'll see that now the program opens, we've got a form that we can start adding objects to and our toolbox. So if we have a look at the interface here, over here the toolbox has all of the different objects that you can put onto the form. So you can see a button here is an object, and you can drag and drop that onto the form. The other little window that you'll need access to is this one, which is properties. And you can see that currently these are all set up as tabs over on the left, over on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you click on the properties window, you can use the little pin up the top to pin that one open. Sometimes you might find that the properties window is too wide. These are all resizable. So when you start setting up your application, it's best to give yourself plenty of working space on your form. Down the bottom here is your errors. It's worth leaving this open as well, because that way you're actually able to see any errors that you have in your application. Okay, so now let's get started. So as I said, we've got our form here, and we're going to start creating some, or editing some properties. So you can edit properties for a form either in code, or you can do it directly just by coming over here on the right-hand side and editing them. So you can see at the moment, this is called Form 1, or it's labeled Form 1. We want to change that to something more meaningful, because if that popped up on your screen, it wouldn't make any sense. Whereas this is our button jumping application, and so I'm going to change that text property to button jumping. You can see there's all sorts of different properties here available to you. You can set up its location, you can set up its size, you can decide which icons actually appear in the form. So if you don't want to have a minimize button or a maximize button, then you can come down here and just say, okay, I don't want to have a minimize box, and that disables it. Same thing with the maximize box. If you don't want one, you just turn it off, and because they're both disabled now, it's hidden them for us. So you can get rid of the boxes there as well and change the title. Now we're going to actually change the name of this form. So just like in Visual Studio, just like in Game Maker, when you're naming objects, eventually if they're all called Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, all the way up to Form 20, you'll lose track of which one's which. So as you create a form, it's best to just get in the habit of naming it something that makes sense. So this is my first loading form, so I'm going to call it Form Main. Excuse me. Okay, so we've got Form Main, we've changed the text, and we've edited a couple of properties here so that we've got no minimize and maximize buttons. Pause me here, and can you do that same step? So rename the form, label the form with the text, and get rid of the minimize and maximize buttons. Okay, hopefully you paused me and you've done that. Now we're going to start adding some buttons. So to do that, you come over here to your toolbox and you simply grab the button and drag and drop it onto your form. You'll see that when it comes across, it has all of its default properties. And so I'm now looking at the properties for button 1. Now this is going to be our jumping button. So we're going to name it button jumping. Something that makes sense. And then we scroll down and we go to the text property. And the button here is going to tempt the people to try to click it. And so we're going to say, no one can click on me, okay? And so that way it's now going to change the text on the button to no one can click on me. You can see you can't read that, so you can manually resize, and you'll see that as I manually resize, it actually changes the property for the size. So you can see it's 141 by 99, and as I resize, it's changing the properties of the size here as well. So you can direct enter numbers over here, or you can just drag and drop to get those. All right, so we've got our button saying no one can click on me. Then we're going to add another button down the bottom here, which is just going to say give up, so that when people can't click on that button, they can give up and the game will end. So let's just simply copy and paste our button so that they're the same size, position it down the bottom, and we're going to change the text of this button to I give up, let me out. I'm going to change the name of this button. I didn't rename my first button to button give up. All right, so I'm going to go back to my button. Oh, I did rename it. It just was clever enough to name it button 1. So we've now got 2 buttons. This is our jumping button, and this is our button give up. We've changed the text property on both of our buttons, and we've also changed the size property on both of our buttons. All right, the video is going to end here. We'll come back to coding. Can you get to this point, please, where you can create a give up button, a jumping button, label your form, have that all ready to go, and the next video will show you how to now code the solution so that our no one can click on me button jumps around the screen as people try to click on it, and the give up button ends the application. All right, so get to that point.